Hello and welcome back to the OMG MotoGP podcast, your Indonesian Grand Prix preview episode. I'm Renita Vermeulen, and of course, we've got the MotoGP mastermind in the house, Mr. Keith Hewen. But today, we're also joined by one of our favorite guests from Driven International, Mr. Ben Willshire. Ben, welcome back to OMG.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me back as well. Always a pleasure. So yeah, looking forward to this one.
Ready for the interrogation, are you, Ben?
Well, kind of. Yeah, let's see.
We'll be getting predictions off of you a bit later on as well, and I have the feeling you might be better at that than we are.
Yeah, I've got some views on it, especially with history at the circuit at Mandalika and the conditions that we're going to see there, potentially mixed. So yeah, I think it's going to be an exciting one, that's for sure.
Well, Ben, can we start off by talking about your involvement with the circuit? As listeners who have heard you on the pod previously know that you're part of the Driven International team, but obviously Lombok, Mandalika, for me, it's an island that's known as a big surfing destination. A lot of Aussies go there for surfing. And then when I found out there was a MotoGP track or MotoGP races attending there, I thought, what a cool location because it is so picturesque, right? But I guess I want to know from you, when designing this circuit and how did it all come about and what key elements had to come into that?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It is a surfer destination, and you saw, pictures of Indonesian paradise almost, the postcard sort of pictures that you see there. It's incredible. And I think we're going to struggle to ever top making a track, with such an amazing backdrop. That's the thing that everyone recognizes from that circuit. But in terms of how it came about, it was quite a strange one, actually. So we do a lot of work with a company called Road Grip, who you may know, they do a lot of the painted runoff areas, the track cleaning. But they work also all over the world with airports and other highways industries. And they were actually on the island working. And I think the idea of a street circuit may have come about after a few drinks one night. With Lombok, the timing of it as well was that the development of Lombok was happening to increase tourism. There's a big tourism drive there by the Indonesian Tourism Board, and they were really keen to have a magnet, something to drive major events. And where the circuit's located at Mandalika, on the beach side, there's new hotels coming, some of which have now been constructed, and the circuit, you may notice, actually, it's the title, the name of the track is actually titled a street circuit. Now, you will both know it couldn't be further from a street circuit in reality if we tried, because you've got big runoff areas for MotoGP that you need. But the reason it was a street circuit is that the resort, the Mandalika resort, the ring road for that resort is the track, or was the track on paper. So the road network for this resort to go to all these hotels, the original idea was, well, let's turn that into a racetrack, and that's, it could be a street circuit. And obviously we then went through the process of saying, well, actually you need runoff areas, and if you're bringing MotoGP, you're going to need more runoff areas than probably any other category in the world. So the circuit itself now isn't really used as a street at all. It is effectively a permanent racetrack, and other events run there and track days, which we're really proud to see. But there is still a route around the track, and that's the service road. So the service road around the track, if you look carefully on the weekend, any of the images, the barriers can be moved off of the service road and it frees up the route around. So there is still a ring road there, but the service road has become the street circuit effectively. So that's how it started. And then I received a paper sketch from a good friend, Mark Hughes, who was involved in developing the project with us. And I have to admit, when I first got this sketch, I thought, this is crazy. There's mountains everywhere. We've got the beach, all sorts of things going on. But we managed to weave our way through, find a route around the venue and come up with the layout that you see today, which isn't a million miles off of the first paper sketch, which I'll send to you, Keith, and Renita, I'll send that over to you so you can see it.
I can't imagine how much effort there must have been in collaboration trying to get this sorted out. And by the way, on the subject of routes to hotels via racetracks, it's always a racetrack. in the route to the hotel, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, exactly.
We always managed to find the good roads on the way to hotels. But the collaboration, to actually have a destination that you've got, I'm assuming it's a fairly blank piece of paper to develop that area.
Yes and no. I mean, when we got involved, there was already a master plan from the tourism board of how that area was going to be developed. So, and the area was already split up into different land plots and land parcels, some of which we could use and some of which we couldn't use. So and the route, this sketch had already been, the ring road had already been decided, right? That this route for the ring road. So then our job was to verify that it could, the topography and the hills could work for the bikes, and then also that we could we then had the opportunity to fine tune all the corners and make them exciting for the bikes, which I think is what we've done. And it still gets everyone around the venue,
Did you have any racers join in with you? Did you have any race riders or the like that looked at it with you?
No, we because it was pretty well defined. We ran a lot on the simulator ourselves internally, driving the track, not riding, to be fair. And then we worked a lot. Actually, Loris Caparossi, who works closely with FIM, he was super helpful in doing reviews, and I think Tom Alfonso might have just come in towards the end of the process as inspector as well. It was quite a while ago now, so we had a lot of good input from Dorna and the FIM safety team as well, and obviously Loris is part of that, so it was good to get his input. One of the things I do remember us playing around with quite a bit, and this is where you say about the blank piece of paper, the pit and paddock in our original design was on the inside of the track, which is quite normal at a lot of racetracks, and actually it would make for slightly easier pit lane in and out, but again that land wasn't available to build on at the time, so that's why there's temporary grandstands there, and that's why the paddock is on the outside and the pit building on the outside, and that's why it's a temporary building as well, because at some point maybe that might change. So there's all sorts of these constraints and things that go on that maybe people are not aware of when you build a track, and then we have to try and get the best result from it.
Probably a good thing that you didn't have any riders getting involved, because I remember when Thailand first came online, and everybody went out there for the first test, they all moaned like hell, saying it was not a racetrack that was going to be, wasn't a favourite, I should say. I remember Valentino Rossi going out there and something along the lines, why are we going here, was the question at the time. And of course, everybody loved it. When we got to racing there, it was just it was probably one of the best Grand Prix there are during the course of the year.
Yeah, you're definitely nervous, right, when the first event comes in terms of the reactions. You always you've done your hard work, you've done a good job really, but obviously the ultimate test is the riders on the track and their feedback. And I think Mandalika has been one of the popular circuits. It's super fast and flowing, really challenges the riders, as we've seen over the last couple of years. And I think one of the nervousness probably we had most was just the infrastructure on Lombok, and actually getting there is not the easiest place, but they've really made it such a, they've really upped the game in that regard with more flights, more amazing hotels, more activation at the event. It's just an incredible place to be, and what a beautiful backdrop for a racetrack.
I wanted to ask, given the climate there being so tropical and having storms and everything like that come through, did you have to adapt much of the circuit? Maybe this is a little bit too much into detail with the asphalt and things, but did you have to adapt a lot of that to handle the extreme weather that they have there?
A lot, yeah. So all of the corners, and then we did, the drainage design on that circuit was important. We've seen, I think the first World Superbike race was, deluge. I think they had a typhoon come through half an hour before the race, and there it's really important in my view. I think there should be quite a careful review of the race time start, because it does have, when we were there, I think 2 or 3 months leading up to the World Superbike race, I was on site doing all the final details, and almost every afternoon at 3 o'clock you can guarantee heavy rain. At 2 o'clock it would be beautiful sunshine, but at 3 o'clock you'd be in dark clouds, and it would roll in really quick. So yeah, the drainage was a big consideration, and I think with the amount of rain that we saw at that first World Superbike race, the fact that they were able to run run a race was quite remarkable. So the track obviously can only deal with a certain amount of capacity, but it does drain pretty quickly actually, which is good, and very high, good grip in the wet as well.
I see it's got a huge capacity for spectators as well there, which that must have come into the design as well, as far as viewing is concerned and the like. I mean, nearly 200,000. I see it's on paper it's got the capacity for. It's a booming country, Indonesia, and that region generally. I mean, did that come into the planning as well? Fairly high on the list.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the commercial team that were behind the event, that was a big consideration for them. So we were planning out all of the spectator areas. And because it was, as you say, almost a blank piece of paper or a new circuit, we did have a lot of space around it. So there's a lot of capacity now for spectators, both on the inside and the outside of the track. There's one place in particular which is my favourite place, and if you ever go to Mandalika, please do make sure you go up there. There's the hill on the inside of Turn 10. If you walk up to there, it's one of the most stunning views, even with or without a racetrack, that you'll ever see in your life. It's incredible. And I remember when we were designing it, walking up there thinking we're going to be able to see this track coming around, and it's exactly as we imagined, right? It's exactly it. So there is a big capacity there, and it's got good room to grow with more events. And I think we realised how popular it'd be when, during the planning of the track, I think Marquez opened a store in Indonesia, the Pull and Bear store, which is one of his sponsors, and he had gone to open this store. I'm not sure how entirely the figures on this, but we thought maybe there'd be, I don't know, 500,000 people or whatever. I think there was 20,000 people in Indonesia turned up to this store opening, and it was, it made us all realise that actually in Indonesia, the MotoGP, these riders are like household names. They're absolute superstars, more than even perhaps in Europe or America or other parts of the world. So it's huge there. It's a huge fan base.
I get the feeling. Sorry.
No, you go, Keith. You go.
No. I was only going to stick a comment on there. You can feel. I have to say, Ben, the passion, the hairs standing up on the back of your hands as you're describing Turn 10 and the racetrack. I mean, it must be a huge amount of pride in achieving something like Mandalika, getting off the paper, working it out, and then seeing how successful it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we get all sorts of weird and wonderful inquiries for building racetracks, and I think probably we see maybe 1 in 30 of them built. So maybe 30 inquiries, maybe 10 of them will do some designs, and one of those 10 might get built. So when you see something so amazing come past your desk and then you get the chance to build it, I think the best bit is then when you're on the ground and you can walk it or drive it or ride it, and it's as you imagined. And I only wish that we could design like every version that we thought of, because there's some really cool layouts that we had as well in our pocket. Like at Turn 10, we had a version with a hairpin that came, instead of going around the hill, it kind of looped back, so the hill would have been on the outside of the track, and you would have got double views, but again, not possible because of land that was available. But yeah, it's come out amazing. I'm really proud of the layout, particularly the S's, so 7, 8 and 9. That was sort of inspired a little bit by the Beckett's complex at Silverstone, if I'm honest, but with some undulation in it and probably a bit quicker on a bike. And then also the final sequence on the initial paper sketch that we received was very sort of L-shaped. And I remember hand sketching something out where we made it a really, really long radius. And we knew at that point we could get the riders to trail brake, and it would cause last lap overtaking and switchback. So that they're 2 corners in particular that I'm proud of, that have come out really well.
Do you ride these things yourself? I mean, when it's sort of in it, do you ride them or drive them?
Yeah, drive and ride. I mean, I'm by no means a MotoGP rider, that's for sure. I can drive a lot better than I can ride. So I still, I competition drive here in the UK. I race, so I do get to drive the tracks. And in Mandalika, obviously, we're riding around on much slower motorcycles, but you do get a feeling of like what the line's going to be and the trajectories if someone were to fall off, and you can look at where the tyre barriers are, if the curbs are in the right place and stuff. So yeah, I think it's important, right? As a designer, you have to know how to ride or drive around these tracks. But yeah, I don't fancy testing myself against some of the MotoGP guys, that's for sure.
I feel like we need to make that happen. We need to get you on a track with them. But
No, thanks. Yeah.
Ben, I wanted to ask you, because normally when we do these previews, Keith gives us a little rundown on places to watch, good corners for overtaking. I know you mentioned the hill and everything before, but for people who are listening who might be thinking of going to Mandalika or are going, what are some of the best places that they can watch some of the on-track action from?
Yeah, I mean, the lucky thing at Mandalika is you've got so many cool places where you can see a lot of the track as well, which is part of the design. The last sequence for me, so the last two corners, there's some great grandstand seats available for general public there as well. So they're general admission tickets and grandstand seater tickets. They're not VIP tickets or anything like that. So it gives people who are going a really good opportunity to be able to see that last sequence, and also you can see down the start finish straight as well. So it's quite cool. You get to see the finish, which is not often at racetracks. As a GA holder, you get to see that unless you're sat right opposite the start finish straight. Turn one is a good one as well. I think if you're above the pit building and looking down at turn one, that's always a good overtaking spot. And then, as I mentioned, the hill at turn 10, but that's much further south. It's a little bit further away to people to walk. So really, if I were going, I would sit probably in that last sector. That would be the place I'd choose to sit.
I mean, you're involved in quite a lot of stuff that's been going on recently. I've been reading about the kart track that you guys have just finished off in Chennai, that Karun Chandok were out there. Kathy Kayan, the other Indian Formula One drivers from years ago, Hakkinen was out there to do the launch as well.
Yeah,
it's disappointing that we're not going to a place the size of India with MotoGP at the moment. It's been put back till 26 now. Is that? I mean, I don't know how close you are to the politics of these things, but why does that trip itself up? The region of Uttar Pradesh, it finds itself in some difficulty to just get this thing away at the Bud International Circuit. You've been close to it with Chennai and the new kart track. I mean, did you find it difficult to deal with India in these circumstances?
Well, there's certainly history there, isn't there? If you look at Formula One and even Formula E as well, actually, where events have not come back after the first or second year or what have you. I think it's just it's such a developing country with motorsport. It's a new thing for India. They're hugely passionate about it. I think they're learning how to commercialize and run events longer term. Getting it off the ground and making it happen year one is one thing. But I think it's more to do with the commercial side, the promotion side, the political side of things. I don't. There's certainly not. Everyone wants to go back. That's for sure, from what I'm hearing, and we would love to go back as well and help them make it even better. So it's it's sad that we're not seeing it. I read today that maybe 26 could be on the card, so let's hope that happens. But yeah, I think it's purely sort of more political and commercial side of things, unfortunately. But I hope they can resolve it.
Well, the calendar's out for 2025, the provisional calendar for MotoGP. We've got a lot of changes on there. I mean, do you look at it? Do you look at the calendar when it comes out and say, God, they shouldn't be running it at that time of the year because of the weather? It doesn't suit the track. Do you ever do that?
I do, yeah. For Mandalika, I always look when it is, what time of year, what the weather, what the race start time is. I then also look at what circuits are new on there that might need upgrading. And then you can imagine I'm on the phone to try and sort of obviously find out whether we can help at all. I always do look. We always look, and the same, across all the motorsport disciplines, we look at all of the calendars.
So what's your thoughts on Silverstone in May? That's changed. We've got the Czech Republic of Brno that's back on, although that's got to be homologated yet. And we've got the new Balaton Park at Hungary. There's quite a bit of interest for 2025. What's your thoughts on those?
I think it's great. I think Balaton Park looks amazing. I've seen the designs. I've not been there, but it looks incredible. And I know the team working on that will do a good job. They're really experienced. So I think that will be a nice addition to the calendar. New tracks, really, it's a neutral playing ground for everyone. Silverstone in May. Fingers crossed we should be okay weather-wise in May, you'd like to think. I think it's an exciting calendar, for next season. And I think the battle next year that we're going to see between the riders, particularly with Marquez coming into the, to partner with Pecco, it's going to be a real battle next year. I think everyone's going to be tuned in, watching how that unfolds. So yeah, it'll be really good.
Keith, I wanted to ask you, because I saw on the calendar that Aragon's moved up to June, and then they've moved Catalonia down to September. How do you think that it's going to go with, bikes like the Aprilias who do struggle in the heat, if they're going to go to the Spanish desert now in basically the middle of summer? How's that going to play out?
Well, to start with, I'm amazed that we've still got the amount of Iberian racetracks that we've got on the calendar. I mean, they've managed to keep them all there. I usually go off on a Valencia rant because, personally, despite the fact I love Valencia as a region, I'm definitely not keen on the kart track that we have to ride around, or they have to ride around now. So that and it always comes at a time of the year. The final round. To have the final round of Valencia has always been sticks in my throat a little bit with that, because it's not a racetrack that you can pass very easily on. It's not a great racetrack. I mean, fantastic from a fan's point of view. It's a bit like the Brands Hatch Indy Circuit. You stand in one place, you can see the whole place. So the design of it and where it is in the world is quite good. But as a final venue, if you go into the wire in Moto3, Moto2, MotoGP, whatever it is, you don't want to end up with the final really at Valencia, because it's so much counts on qualifying. If you're not qualified on the front row or second row at the least, you're screwed effectively for where your major points are coming from. But I think, getting back to your question, the Spanish side of things, I'm glad they've kept Aragon. I love Aragon as a racetrack. It's in the middle of nowhere, but it's a great racetrack. And talking about, we've spoken about this before, that racetrack from the hotel, that you can't get better roads getting to the track than from your hotel an hour away to go to Aragon. I've said it before, and I'm sorry if I keep saying it, but really it's from a motorcyclist point of view, and even a hire car point of view, it's a great place to go to for many reasons. So I'm glad to see them all on there, although if I was going to drop one, and it won't be the one that Valencia won't get dropped, probably because it's regional. And there's quite a lot of country politics that come into it. And I'm sure, Ben, you come across that occasionally, where different regions are in conflict with each other over what they can and can't do. Valencia just seems to me to be the one that ought to be kicked out. But I can bet you bottom dollar it will be bloody Aragon that gets dropped off the end of it, rather than Valencia, if that does happen. But I'm glad to see them all on there for next year.
Well, Ben, I want to ask you this then. If you could add a circuit to the calendar for MotoGP, what circuit would you put on there?
Good question.
Oh, I could probably write a long list. I would like to see. Yeah, I would like to see. Putting other rounds aside, because obviously Silverstone already in the British Grand Prix. But I'd love to see Brands Hatch or Donington. I think they're two really great bike circuits. I remember, I was actually a mechanic, believe it or not, on World Sidecar team when I was a teenager. And that's all experience. And I remember going to Brands Hatch for the World Superbikes, and there was like 100,000 people. It was just the most amazing weekend. I mean, we were shoved somewhere down at the bottom of the paddock with our little tent and the sidecar guys, and it was great. So yeah, that brings back memories. Brands. There's some great tracks in the US as well, actually. I'd love to see MotoGP bikes running on some of the US circuits, some of the old school US tracks. But I think, Brands or Donington would be cool to see.
You'd have plenty of work to do to get them up to speed with regard to homologation. Unfortunately, Brands Hatch just doesn't have the runoffs.
No.
You just need to demolish all those houses that are around Dingle Dell and down Sheen Curve.
Yeah, it's such a cool track. I mean, my favourite circuit, which is where I'm near sat now, is Alton Park, right? Which I'd like again, but you'd never be able to do it. But it would be a cool thing to see. I mean, they run the British Superbikes here, which is spectacular. I think Donington or Brands would be cool. And I'm not just saying that because I'm sat in the UK.
All right, Keith, your turn now. Surely you've raced on some cool tracks that we don't get to go to anymore.
Yeah, well, that is true, but I tend, again, it's UK centric really when you consider it. But I mean, even in Oz, you've had one or two tracks there that could have come good at some stage. I mean, it's very sad when tracks drop off the calendar and they become not viable anymore. Alton Park, you mentioned where you are, Ben. I mean, Alton Park, Cadwell Park, Brands Hatch, they're iconic racetracks, like the American tracks you're talking about. Some of the Road America and the like. You see it sometimes in IndyCar, and you think, what a waste. Motorbikes on there. Speak to Ben Spies or somebody like that when they were running the AMA championships or as known as Moto America nowadays. I mean, great racetracks, but bloody dangerous. You do not want to be falling over. And that is the problem. And that's where Ben and Driven International come in. You know, if somebody decides that they want to make it work, we can't here. You know, we live on a little island that's overpopulated anyway, and we've got a lot of NIMBYs. No, not in my backyard. In case you haven't got that same in Australia, I thought I might have to explain that.
No, I've never heard that before.
No, sorry,
because everyone here has massive backyards, so we don't have that problem.
That's very true. You do. NIMBYism is a major problem. I mean, Croft is not a great race circuit in my view, but it's in the north of England. It's a good place to have a racetrack because they're a bit starved of stuff like that. But of course, what happened was they built new houses around it, and then all of a sudden the council rules against excessive noise and stuff like that. So your promoters across tied up with red tape and the like. I mean, why would you buy a bloody house? Mallory Park's another one. Why would you buy a bloody house that's right next to a race circuit and then expect there not to be any noise? It's a ludicrous situation that people use planning laws and the like to thwart any development of existing racetracks. So no, getting back, because I always ramble on, it would be Brands Hatch would be the one where, for me, I mean, it's in a great place in the country. You've got to look at the site access and the size of the local areas to go with it. And it is just a fantastic racetrack. I always remember Frank Sheen, Barry's dad, used to tell me stories. He'd come in really close, Frank would. And it was his guilty secret. He'd sneak up, let me tell you about this boy. And he'd put his hand on your knee and he'd say, Brands Hatch, we used to go round the other way. And he said, we made a film there one time and I had to go on the grass and fall off. Yeah, the stories that you used to hear from the Sheens, who right up until recently lived nearby to Brands Hatch. It's just got so much history. It's standing the hairs on the back of my hand up, Ben, just like you were a moment ago over the designs. It's just it's in your heart, it's in your blood. But Brands for me would be the one.
All right, well, let's move on to this weekend, the Indonesian Grand Prix. And my question is, are we going to see just another Ducati dominant weekend once again with Pecco, Jorge, and possibly Enea Bastianini with the tyre management come through from the podium on Sunday? Ben, what's your thoughts?
I think you are likely to see a Ducati dominated weekend, absolutely. Which order the riders are going to be in, I think, a bigger question. I mean, we spoke earlier about the weather in Mandalika. I know that Marquez has got unfinished business in Mandalika after the big accident he had there, and I wonder whether he'll have a point to prove now. And then obviously you got the championship battle as well, and the mental side of it with people, the pressure starting to build as we go. I think it's round 15 of 20, so you're kind of starting to get to that, the last quarter of the championship. So yeah, I do think you'll see the Ducatis all at the front, but I think it's going to be a battle of a mental battle for the riders and who can cope with the pressure, because this race I think could swing the championship. Really, those last few races that you start to enter, if someone's got a big gap in the championship points, it will affect the next few races on how they go into them, really.
And that kind of links into where I'm going to go with this situation as well, because I think we're going to get a lot of spoilers at this one. The weather, as you alluded to, Ben, is a key, crucial factor. But at this time of the year, you've got those guys that are going for a championship and those guys that have got no chance with the championship. So therefore, there's a different mentality that goes into each and every approach to these things. But you've got to look at Acosta won here last year in Moto2. He's got good muscle memory for this racetrack. Acosta could be an upset. Brad Binder last year was something else. He got 2 long lap penalties for irresponsible riding last year, and he still ended up, well up the order, even after doing 2 long laps. So Brad Binder's got the bit between his teeth at Mandalika. It's obviously that surfing. He's a bit of a dude. He probably takes on the whole ethos of the place. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to be about who gets between the main title contenders. And I think we're going to see a bit of that. Quartararo had a good ride here last year as well. And the Yamaha's looking pretty good at the moment. Whether it will work out on this long, fast flowing stuff. We'll find out. I think there's more questions than you're ever going to have answers for a place like this, and it all keys around how that weather pans out.
It's definitely a circuit that encourages. I mean, we've seen super close racing there as well. And the first 2-3 laps can make a big difference. People changing positions down at turn 10 under that hill. So I think, a clean start is going to be important here, and then try to break, the top 2 or 3, be smart and try to break away from the pack. So, yeah, it's going to be good. I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to this one, actually. I think it's going to be one of the closest races of the year, I hope.
I always just have that memory of the rain shaman from a few years ago, and it just is stuck in my mind. And I think is one of the coolest things where we could almost see what we did witness the culture coming into MotoGP, and you're like, oh yeah, we are in Indonesia and we are somewhere else where we're not normally in Europe. So that was one of the cool things. But I would love to have a flag to flag. I think I've said this previously. I feel like we're just overdue for a good flag to flag, and not one where Jorge Martin comes in because it's slightly wet.
Yeah, poor old Jorge. He won't be doing that again in a hurry. Probably we'll see him hang out for too long next time. He'll wait for too long. Everyone else will come in and change bikes. That'll be the right call. And talking about what you were saying a moment, Ben, I mean, a good start, a good clean start. We know Jorge Martin is very sharp off the line. He always manages to make the break at the beginning. So into turn 1, that is going to be fairly critical to stay it. So where's the trouble when you don't qualify quite well? And this has been Marc Marquez's problem of late, is that you don't qualify well. You're in that first lap melee, which always holds you down, holds you back. And trying to make those passes early on, you risk everything. But again, as I said a moment ago, the fact of the matter is there are guys that don't have anything really as far as the championship's concerned. So it's a kind of balls out session. Let's go for it. Let's make this work for us. And I think that's where the spoilers come in. And the likes of Jack Miller, Brad Binder, Acosta particularly, as I say, won here last year. So he's got good memories. And that this time of the year, that has a big effect. If your mental state is in such a good place that you feel good and you feel confident. We've talked about Acosta before. Is he making too many mistakes? Probably, but he is a rookie. I mean, you've got to remember that after this, he's not done this on a MotoGP bike before. So he's in a really interesting place and quite often ends up being the top KTM stroke gas. And he might well find himself in that position again this weekend.
What you'll find as well at Mandalika, I mean, if you think of this when you're watching the race as well, compared to some of the other circuits like Silverstone, that are more designed maybe for as F1 tracks, say, the length of the straights at Mandalika are not very big. I think start-finish straight is only 700 meters. There's the run down to turn 10, so the bikes don't get much chance to separate out. It's all through the corners, so you've got to be quite brave. You've got to have a really good setup. And that last sequence of the track there that I mentioned earlier with the trail braking, that's going to be a key opportunity for people to pass, particularly, if they want to climb through the positions or in the last few laps where there's a fight. So the circuit lends itself to close bike racing. So, yeah, it's going to be one that people have to take some risk if they want to get a good result. Watch
out for the beast. He's ready for an inside move. Bastianini owns a lap record here, by the way. He holds a lap record around the 2.6 mile circuit. So, and he's peaking right at the right time. He's just got a point in front of Marc Marquez last time round, so he's third in the championship. And he's moving on team wise. So you might find he's not feeling too inclined to help Pecco, perhaps. We'll find out. It's got so many connotations for this weekend, so many things we got to look out for. I can't wait.
Well, what about the Aprilias this weekend? Because obviously the track, like you said earlier, Ben, it is quite fast flowing, and those tracks tend to suit the Aprilia's Elation Maverick. If we don't have crazy hot temperatures, do you think, Keith, that they could be closer to the front this weekend?
I just think Aprilia have dipped a bit at the moment. I think everybody else is finding their feet better than Aprilia are, which is a real shame because it looked at the first third of the year, you could say Aprilia were in with a shout, but it just seems to have dropped off a little bit, doesn't it? And I mean, no, in the short answer. I think everyone else has found their feet, and everybody else is at their best game, and Aprilia have got to make almost 2 steps to catch up.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I understand that. I just thought because it's the flowing style circuit, maybe, but that's okay. You know, who knows? We'll see what's going to happen on the weekend, right? But something that
Maverick had a good ride there last year. I mean, Maverick
Yeah.
Vinales rode well there last year. So, and you never know what side of the bed Maverick Vinales gets out of.
Yeah, true. We never know what Maverick we're going to get on the day, right? All right, you two. Well, something that we definitely have to do, and we know that's coming, is your predictions. Now, Ben, you are our guest, so I'm going to throw you under the bus, and you get to go first. Can you tell us your prediction for the pole, possibly the sprint podium, and then obviously Sunday's Grand Prix podium? No pressure.
Thank you. So I think pole, Jorge Martin will be on pole. I think you're going to see a big battle in sprints. I'd like to see a big battle between Pecco and Martin in the sprint races. I think for the Grand Prix, we're going to see the top 3 of the Grand Prix. My prediction would be Pecco first, Jorge Martin second, and I'd love to see Marquez on the podium in third. I don't know if I answered all of your questions, but maybe I got out of it.
You're allowed.
All right, Keith, your turn.
Pole Pecco. Just got the feeling that he'll nail that down. Jorge Martin for the sprint. I think I've just got that feeling that we are going to have an unusual shake-up this week. I've just got a feeling like I want to put Acosta in the top 3. And I'm going to in the sprint. I'm going to have him third. So Jorge Martin, Enea Bastianini, there you go. Jorge Martin, Enea Bastianini, and Acosta. I like to split it up a bit. A good spread bet. For the Grand Prix, Pecco back on top, I think. And again, it's that Binder thing. I just feel like Binder he's angry. He wants to make it happen. He wants to be the top KTM man, and he's definitely got the performance to do it. So I'm going to put him third, and Jorge Martin second. There you go.
Oh, a spicy sprint podium. I liked that. Well, Ben, before we sign off, what's next for Driven International? Any exciting projects you can kind of tell us a little bit about, maybe?
Yeah, I can give you a few insights. I'm off to US in a couple of weeks. We've got not for 2 wheels, but we've got a really cool club track opening, Motorsport Gateway. They're paving that at the moment, so not far outside of Detroit. And this is a really popular concept in the US now that we're seeing, where people keep their cars there. They come and have like sort of a membership lifestyle club and drive. So a bit like the golf course concept. So this one's under construction now. We're really proud of it. It's got, I think, a 14% banked corner. It runs through different woodlands. We've got almost like a reverse corkscrew that you drive uphill and then along back straight. So it's a really cool track, actually. So that's being built at the moment. And then I'm spending a lot of time in Southeast Asia at the moment as well, and hopefully some new bigger projects that are coming.
You mentioned that club track at America. It intrigues me a little bit with America because we're still, Liberty International's coming on fairly soon. That surely is going to be ticked and handshakes and done. When Liberty do get control of Dorna and the sport in general, they are going to be keen, surely, to develop again more in America. We're a bit stuck with Indianapolis, which is not really the kind of track that we enjoy that much. It's huge. Laguna Seca or WeatherTech or whatever they call it nowadays is one of my favourite racetracks, but a bit dangerous. And the authorities don't seem to be too keen on letting us spread out into the flora and fauna of California. So do some of these club tracks that are coming online, are they built with a bit of an eye to the future that it could possibly develop into something much bigger, or are they strictly just for the rich and as a plaything?
I think the biggest thing there is like how we design the tracks. So they're really designed for the sort of membership base. And as you know, with the FIM, the safety is so critical with the larger runoff areas, different types of barriers, even different types of curbs, right, for the bikes. So mainly the ones we've designed have always been, like, our customers have always wanted them to be running as a membership base for cars. So yeah, we've not really designed anything for bikes, but it does pose an interesting question. Could you have a community of bikers that want to go and hang out at a track? That would be interesting. I don't think there's anything like that that's been purpose built for two-wheel riders. Maybe that would be a cool thing to have. And the US is the place where a lot of these lifestyle tracks were born. And I'm also going to change my answer from earlier. I think Laguna Seca would be a cool track to have back on the calendar, wouldn't it? So for next year, and there are things happening there with new people taking the track on, etc. So I think over the next 5 to 10 years, you may see quite a different track there actually in terms of the venue as a whole, and that would be really an obvious place to be at. Located in California. It's got steeped in history for motorcycle racing, and it's a really cool track. So maybe that. There's some other cool venues, right? I mean, you've got Road Atlanta. Whether you could make that work with the runoffs and stuff, who knows? But there's some really cool tracks tucked away in the US that, VIR as well as another one. All of them have got really good undulation and quite sort of old school. And I think a bit like we've seen in Formula One with, I think COVID kind of forced us to go back to some old tracks. Wouldn't it be nice to see some of these circuits on the MotoGP calendar, providing they could be made safe, of course?
I don't think you're ever going to be out of work, Ben. That is for sure.
No. Yeah.
Oh, well, Ben, thank you so much for coming back on the OMG podcast. It's been so cool to hear about Mandalika and obviously get a bit more insight to what you guys do. So once again, thank you so much for coming back.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it. And I've been really enjoying listening to all the other podcasts as well. So keep up the good work. Thank you.
Legend. Keith, as always, a pleasure hearing from you. And guys that are listening, we have something really exciting coming up, exclusive for our Patreon members. Do you want to get up close and personal with your favorite OMG guests? Well, you can sign up to our Patreon and you'll get VIP access to our live streams of our podcast recordings with our special guests. So you could be chatting with MotoGP riders or have your questions answered by Ben himself. So check out the Patreon link in the description below. But also, if you can't get enough of OMG MotoGP, then do check out our social channels at OMG MotoGP on all the platforms. And if you want to send us an email, you can send that to omgmotogp@gmail.com. But for now, that's all we have, and we'll be back soon with more OMG MotoGP.